2021 has led to explosive property prices, but is the same true for 2022? That's exactly what I'm going to be discussing in today's video. So it has been tough the last couple of years to make these predictions, and that's because of the huge amount of changes that have been coming into place. Yes, the big C-bomb, the pandemic, but also the government intervention has meant that one prediction today can completely change tomorrow. So before we go into 2022, I did a video just like this at the beginning of the year. Let's see how much I got right and what I screwed up on. So let's jump into my 2021 list. The first thing I looked at was the NHS, the stress on it, and I was really worried about the increase in mental health. So that one did come true, unfortunately. They were under a lot of stress. The whole country kind of needed to go into lockdown to protect the NHS. And what this did is have a huge impact on the global economy, but obviously the UK economy as a micro. The second thing, and I'm not really proud that this one come to fruition, is tax changes. I predicted that they would have a major implication on businesses in particular and not so much on individuals in terms of tax. I was kind of right and kind of wrong. I was right in the fact that the major implications has come into corporation tax, which is really hard actually, because as a business owner, you obviously only pay corporation tax on your profits, but profits have taken a real beating, and actually we need everything we can to reinvest and build up from the damage of the last 2 years, and they're increasing it over the next few years from 19% to 25% tax. But there's more. So what they also did is they looked into personal tax, national insurance. Now, national insurance kind of has a different title, but ultimately it's an income tax to the individual and it's a business tax to the company. If you don't know, you as an individual pay national insurance, which is a fairly hefty tax, contributes to the exact same thing, by the way, it's income tax. But also as a business, when I pay my staff, what you might not know is I also have to pay national insurance. So it's another bloody tax, right? So if you're paying somebody 25 grand a year, actually you're not paying them 25, it's more like 26 and a half, and they're paying tax on top of their income tax. So kind of feels like we're getting brutalized from all angles there, but I guess we do have to recoup a lot of the spend that's been happening over the last couple of years. The next thing I predicted was a dip in the market towards the end of the year. And the reason why I thought this was BBills was going to come to an end, furloughs coming to an end, stamp duty at this point was stopping in April, maybe May at that point. And so I thought a lot of this impact was going to be coming in. However, I was wrong. It has definitely not dipped in terms of prices. And I did think there'd be a bit of a correction. Not major though, like some people were talking 30%. I was like 5-10% maybe. I was wrong. What I was right about is a dip in the market. So if you're involved in property, what you would have seen is a softening in terms of the demand for property. So no longer are properties going online and selling the same day. You're actually getting them online for a good couple of weeks now. It's gone back to what it was, maybe not quite pre-COVID, but building up to that. So definitely a slowdown, but nowhere near the impact that I thought of, which really is kudos to the government. Next prediction I made was that they would extend the stamp duty holiday, which originally was coming to an end in April, May. I said October, and I believe it was towards the end of September into October where that influx come. And naturally, as I predicted, that would drive sales in because naturally people want to save on their stamp duty. And then after that, it had a slight correction in the market, but it wasn't really a correction. If you imagine the growth was like that, it kind of went like that towards the end of that stamp duty and then corrected on that curve. So no real correction, but a correction from the all-time high. The next one, a bit of a political thing, which I don't really talk about on this channel because I don't really think I should have an opinion on politics. I'm not an expert. But what I did predict whilst this was all going on is a lot of contentious papers would be passed through government without us really paying notice. Notice how Brexit, for example, has actually happened in this year and hardly anyone was talking about it. And yet it's what consumed us for years about the whole debacle, the lies and everything like that. And now it's barely been mentioned. And actually, if you look online on the government website and you see what's been passed in the last couple of years, you will be absolutely baffled by what's been managed to be put through without us really noticing. So just to round up, probably my biggest balls up in my prediction was predicting that the second half of this year or the tail end of this year, we'd have that correction. And I was completely wrong. And this really, again, is kudos to the government because of the stimulus that's been put in, the amount of money that's been thrown at us getting started up as an economy again. And Rishi Sunak said at the beginning, you know what, we're going to do whatever it takes to get this going. And to be fair to the guy, he definitely has delivered onto that. So the question is, where does that leave us today? And how is 2022 going to look? So the first thing I want to look at is mortgage interest rates. Now, this is actually a massive indicator to the whole economy, but majorly down to you and I as a property investor, right? So on Thursday, at the point of filming this video, the Bank of England went into a vote to decide whether interest rates were going to increase. Now, we kind of had this ridiculously low base rate, which is what the Bank of England's charging, and LIBOR, etc., not the video for it. But these really low interest rates mean that the lending, i.e. borrowing money from lenders, is actually incredibly cheap. And when borrowing is so cheap, we can then pay more for property, okay, and get better returns. And so that naturally pushes up the prices. Because of all of the inflation that's been going on, and bear in mind, inflation as quoted by the government isn't actually representative of true inflation, because you might not know this, but it's based on CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and that doesn't take account of some major things, namely energy, so fuel at home and in your car, and it also doesn't take account of inflation in food, both of which have gone up a staggering amount in the past year. So inflation in reality is a lot higher than you think, closer to 10% than they predicted 4 to 5%. What does this mean? They need to bring that down. What is one of the key ways of doing that? Increasing interest rates. So do I think it's going to be dramatic? No. I don't think it's going to go from bases of 0.25% to 1.8%, but it wouldn't shock me if by the end of the year, we're looking between 0.5% and 0.75%. So is this going to have a dramatic impact? No, but it is an indication of what you might want to start doing with your mortgages. So if the talks start again, and this comes to fruition, I'm going to be putting everything on 5-year fixed mortgages. Next, market sales. So this year we had 1.5 million market sales, so it's pretty good actually. That's a pretty strong market in the whole of the UK, and I think we're going to start seeing a bit of a slowdown. Why is this? Well, I think we kind of had this mad rush. If you think about buses, and you're waiting at a bus for a bus outside, and no buses come in for 20 minutes, and then 3 buses come at once, right? And it's so bloody annoying. That's kind of what has happened this year. The market got closed last year, quite literally, and we've been playing catch up ever since. And all of that pressure in demand has come into 2021, which has driven these prices up over 10% over the last 12 months. Now that people are getting back to normal, it's starting to calm down a bit as it's getting into winter anyway. I think this is going to carry through. So my prediction for sales by the end of 2022 is 1.2 million, which is a 20% drop off in sales over the UK. But what about prices? So I think this is the most interesting of all. Are prices going to drop? I doubt it. I doubt it because of a couple of reasons. One, the supply in the UK compared to the demand is still staggeringly undersupplied, okay? So we've got this unique situation where we're on a tiny island, most of which we can't actually build on due to the green belt, and a lot more people looking for properties right now. So by the end of 2022, there's predicted to be a 1 million unit, that's 1 million unit housing shortage. Now, naturally, when the supply is here and the demand is up here, what does that do for prices? It drives it up. So no, I don't think we're going to see any major correction. I also think it's worth looking at the macro, which is the 18-year property cycle. And I've actually done a video on that, which you can go and watch after this. We'll put a link in the comments. But the 18-year property cycles goes from the crash to the boom to the crash again. And we're on around year 12 to 13, which means we should have really strong capital growth moving forward. And little blips, and it might not feel like a blip right now with the pandemic, but little blips like this really won't impact it. So, do I think they will increase? Yes, I do. I think there is going to be a capital increase, but nothing like we've seen this year. I think this year should be treated like it is a complete anomaly based on these crazy shitstorm of situations that are going on around us, right? So I think we're not going to see double-digit growth. I think we'll probably see between 4.5 and 5.25% growth across the UK. So the question is, where do I think the strongest capital growth will be? And this is all about average deficit cities. Well, what the hell does that mean, Jamie? Well, an average deficit is everything around prices in general works towards an average. So if you think about objects on Earth, or anything really in the universe, the larger an object is, the more gravitational pull that it has. And it's the same with numbers, in that an average is representative of all of the numbers around it. And what does that number represent? As many of the numbers as possible. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. But what it means for us is, if it is an average, which does shift over time, naturally everything is pulled to it statistically and emotionally. Emotionally, what I mean is, on a subconscious level, we're always comparing against different numbers. For example, if I know an average property in one of my areas I'm buying is 100,000, that's really important. So if somebody puts a 3-bed property on for 130, I'm immediately going, where the fuck are they getting that number from, right? Whereas you might go, Jamie, I can't buy a shed for 130,000. What the hell are you on about? It's because you're comparing against the average. 130,000 isn't expensive. It isn't pricey at all until you compare it to the £90,000 house next door. You get it? So when we're looking at this average of 270,000, you need to be looking at areas that are not too far lower, but are they lower than the average? The reason why is this protects you and gives you a safety blanket, because everything over time moves towards that average. So even if the average comes down or goes up a little, the ones that are consistently below are consistently driving towards that number. So the final thing you might be thinking is, what strategies to watch in 2022? And I'm dividing this up into 2 players. Honestly, you've heard me chime on about this for so long. If you're new to the channel, you'll hear me chime on about this. Boring, vanilla, buy-to-lets. Honestly, when there's change in the market, just be as vanilla and boring as possible, because they've got the best foundations. When there's change, it makes people nervous. Same as building a business. The number one thing is not having things shifting around you. You can't build a skyscraper on quicksand. So you want these solid foundations, and the world at the moment is quicksand. So if you are going to be investing, I like going for boring, safe, vanilla, buy-to-let investments. And that's the way I think you should be doing it too. And yeah, that does mean that there's going to be more demand on this. So it might be the fact that you use a deal packager. And it's why if you're working full-time and earning money and you want to get your money working hard for you, I always recommend using a deal packager. We do that as a service, by the way. We'll put a link below if you've got 100 grand or more. But what if you're a bit more advanced? Now, this is where something gets a little bit more exciting. And it's through the realm of commercial conversions. Now, when people talk about commercial conversions, usually what they mean is office to residential. But I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about office to residential conversions, industrial to residential being primary dwelling or buy-to-lets, and retail to residential. Now, the reason for that is planning has changed over this year, which means you don't have to go through the full planning rigmarole that you do for a lot of planning departments, and actually you can get prior approval, which this isn't the video to go through, for retail. Now, a lot of employers have been questioning recently, do we need the space? Everything's gone online to Amazon and things like that. What about office space? Well, we've kind of had to be adjusting around that, where a lot of people have been working from home. And if they're a bigger, more systems-based business, they've realized that actually the drop-off doesn't really impact the profit margins. And actually they're spending millions every single year in offices. Should we get rid of them? I think what you're going to see is a lot of opportunities coming up, especially in the latter half of 2022, all about building these residential conversions to facilitate this demand. So am I right? I don't know. Naturally, it's a prediction and it's just one guy's opinion, but I'm also interested in yours. Let me know in the comments, do you think I'll be right? We'll find out at the end of the year, right? And if not, what do you think will come true in 2022? Let me know what you thought of the video in the comments. If you did get value, it would help me tremendously if you lightly destroy the like button. And if you're new to the channel and want to find out more about property investment, then make sure to hit the subscribe and the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video.